several of the parascapular muscles. We wanted to have the participants do an exercise that particularly that's been shown in the literature to show a lot of serratus anterior activity. Right, so the punching exercise, they had people punch against a rubber band basically until they couldn't do it anymore. I would have them do 15 repetitions. We'd measure their serratus strength, and then we kept doing that until we actually got a drop about 80%, which some people probably wouldn't call fatigue, but it's certainly a decline in function of 20%. So we were trying to capture more, what we do during our daily activities, how many times we swing our tennis racket, play our violin, paint our paintings, whatever we do, moving our upper arms around. Well, before we started this whole thing, we outfitted the participant with electromagnetic tracking sensors. So it's it's one of the many ways we can measure motion, particularly in 3 dimensions. So we said we go through a lengthy procedure to set that up. We then have them raise and lower their arm 5 times, and research and other work that we've done in the lab shows that if you have the people hold a small weight in their hand, you get a little more stable motion. So we would have them hold a weight, we might have them raise and lower their arm 5 times. We would then, for analysis, would take the middle 3 repetitions and determine what their scapular motion was through a program that's called Motion Monitor. Right? We put them through our fatigue protocol, basically the serratus punch activities, and then we'd have them raise and lower their arm 5 times again. And actually, they would raise and lower both arms. It kind of balances the body out a little. So kind of we'd induce fatigue, and we'd see, and the analysis was kind of a pre-test, post-test. Typically, when we raise our arms up overhead, the scapula goes through of upward rotation, posterior tilt, and external. So it kind of does something like that. The people that we see winging, actually we see they don't really do that external rotation. They kind of go more into an internal rotation. So what we saw is after the fatigue, people, instead of going through that upper rotation, posterior tilt, they just went in through less posterior tilt and less external rotation. Right? And other work has shown that that's pretty much what the serratus anterior does a lot to upwardly rotate the scapula, but also holds the scapula against the rib cage, and helps produce some of that extra rotation and posterior tilt. The reason I think that is of interest or importance is because as the scapula goes through that progression of upper rotation, external rotation, posterior tilt, it kind of gets the acromion up out of the way of the subscapularis muscle, the rotator cuff muscle. It also helps keep the glenoid in contact with the humeral head. So it keeps it stable, shoulder stable, and it stops kind of compressing or pinching on the rotator cuff.